Okay, so now I've centered my clay. I am going to be throwing a little bit of a vase with some shape. And so, scratch that. I've centered my base. Scratch that. I've centered my clay, and my motive here is to throw a mug with some form in it. I want to pay attention to the form of the mug and the rim and a little bit of the foot area. So I've got my base pulled and compressed, and it's open and it's ready for me to pull up the wall. So I'm going to get 4 o'clock wet. My wall is nice and centered. All right, I'm going to go in and I'm going to pinch and I'm going to pull up. Now, even though I want this vessel to have some form to it other than straight up, I don't want to do that till the very end, okay? The most stable wall when you're throwing is straight up and down because that clay is stacked up on top of itself. If you start out and you just do all this woo stuff before you've got the clay up into the wall, you're going to run into some issues, okay? Some more advanced potters will do that, but you know, it's after throwing like thousands and thousands of mugs. They get a little faster at it. Okay, so I'm going to pull straight up. Again, I'm scooping, and I am pinching to a certain thickness that I want, and I keep that thickness the entire time I pull up, coming all the way up to the top, and then I'm going to throw my invisible wall. Let go, and then I'm going to compress my rim to make sure that stays nice and even. And before you even pull your wall up for the first time, you kind of want to think about what you want your mug to be shaped like. You know, have that in mind. Now for me, I think I'm going to go straight up, and then I'm going to have it scoop in and flare out a little bit. That's my mission. Sometimes it doesn't turn out like you want it to, right? Just like life. But it's good to have sort of a vision of what you're going for from the start. All right, this is my second pull. I'm going to really scoop up the clay in the bottom there. That's always where the clay lives, and you got to make it travel. Pulling it up through the center, not spending too much time in the center. And then I'm going to come up and throw my invisible wall. Let go, compress my rim. Now, when you're shaping a vessel and you want to make it bow out and come in, you don't want the wall to be too thin because you need that clay. If you're going to be pushing it out and in, you're going to be making it thinner as you do that. So you're going to be throwing a little bit of a thicker cylinder. Not too thick, but I'd say maybe like, what is this? I don't know, 1/4 of an inch. Okay, I'm scooping the water up from the inside just so I can see. Getting 4 o'clock wet. I'm going to make one more pull so I can get that clay down here up into the wall. One more little scoop. And this is so gentle. Sometimes I hold my breath. You really should breathe through this, but sometimes I hold it because it helps me concentrate. If you get dizzy, then breathe, okay? I chose this Pink Floyd song because it's called Breathe, which is really important to do when you're throwing. All right, I'm going to scoop the water up from the base. It's a pretty big mug, you guys, but it's going to shrink, remember? It's going to shrink. All right, keep the wheel clean. So now I'm going to shape it a little bit. I'm going to get 4 o'clock wet. I'm going to take my rib tool, clean it off a little bit. You don't want to add clay to your piece. Okay, I'm going to get my hand wet. When your piece gets taller, it's dry up here, and you don't want to put your hand in there and then rub a dry skin against the inside of your mug because that could snag and create a little bit of a problem. All right, so I said I wanted it to go out and in and out. So if I want it to go out, I have to push from the inside, and if I want it to go in, I have to push from the outside. So it's all about control. I'm going to go pretty slow, but I'm always following it with the rib tool because I'm compressing my wall as I shape it. Okay, so I'm pushing out, coming up the side, and now I'm pushing harder with my rib tool to get a skinny waist. Okay, and then I'm coming up and I'm starting to push out from the inside again so I can flare out my mug a little bit. And then I'm going to stop before I hit the rim this time because I want my rim to be thicker than my wall. And then I'm going to very gently let go. So it's subtle, and I'll probably do maybe 2 or 3 passes with the rib tool just to get it the way I want it. And I also have to pay attention to how fragile it is. If I see that it's getting weak or I can feel that it's getting weak, I want to stop. But again, I'm going to encourage you when you first start throwing to, find your edge, find the threshold before it flops, or make it flop. Like, keep throwing until you hit a point where it flops. That's the only way you're going to know how far you can take it. And the more you do that, the better you're going to get at this. And each clay body you throw with is going to have a different threshold. It's just the nature of the clay. They're all different. They're like they're people. They have personalities, and they're going to act differently on the wheel. They're going to respond differently to your touch. They're going to respond differently to the water that you put on it, the tools, the techniques. All right, so I'm at my threshold. I know I can feel it. I've gotten used to where that is with porcelain, and I don't want to lose this, so I'm going to clean up the inside. Get all my water out of there. I never want to take a piece off the wheel with water inside. That will for sure create a crack in your piece. And then I like to put my little signature finger swirl in the bottom. You guys can play around with that and come up with your own little signature. Okay. And then the next step is going to be to smooth out the rim with my paper towel. I'm going to dip it in some water. I don't want it to be too watery because I just clean up the inside. Now think about your rim and think about the smoothness and the shape of it. This is where your mouth is going to go when you drink out of this mug. If it's rigid and sharp, it's going to be really uncomfortable to drink out of. And guess what? It's going to be a lonely mug sitting in your cupboard, never used. So make sure to consider the rim. So with this demo, we've considered the body, the shape of the body, the form of the body, It's 3D, so it's the form of the body, the rim, and then we're going to consider the foot when we trim it. But we are going to cut off this extra clay. We don't want to have to trim this later. We want to get it off there. So we're going to cut it, drag the needle tool underneath because it's goopy porcelain. Probably going to have to do a little scooping, but as I scoop, it just kind of comes off perfectly. And I scoop and I kind of rip it off. Whoa! I gotta go dance around the room to turn the lights on. Hang on. Okay. So you really have to kind of rip it off. You don't want it to bunch up and stick to your piece. Okay, and then I get a little bit more of that clay off the wheel. And then I flip my knife tool over, and then I clean that up too. And later on in later demos, we might get into how to alter your piece on the wheel, but not quite yet. Okay? Stop the wheel, clean your wire tool off if you've been using it. You don't want that dry clay to get stuck to the bottom of your piece. Okay? Floss. Make it tight, pull it under pretty quick. Get your claw, slide it under, slide it off, lift it up, put it on your board, and then look down straight on it. If it looks perfect, don't touch it. But if it seems like it got a little wonky when you took your claw out, just put your fingertips on the base, very little pressure, jiggle it a little bit. Sometimes just a little jiggle makes it pop back into shape. Don't ever touch the rest of it and let it sit. As it's drying, you want to flip it over about, halfway between really wet and leather hard, you want to flip it over and dry your base out a little bit so that you can trim it on the wheel later and add a handle. All right, that is the end of that demo. If you're continuing to throw, you want to get this off of there. So take your wood knife tool and just scrape that off. You don't need to wipe your wheel down. It's good to have a little bit of tackiness on there. That's all I do really, is I just kind of remove that. And then I grab my new piece of clay and I start over and I just keep throwing like a production potter. Okay? All right, thank you.